Well, I'm really hoping that my homily won't make this hour feel like an eternity. Geology is a portal to earlier worlds. By teasing out the puzzles of its fossils and crystals and folds and faults, geologists reveal the secret stories of the past. An understanding and respect for the earth can do more than just explain landscapes. It can help to guide us as we struggle with the great challenge of preserving the habitability of our home. What can we learn from the earth? Geologists and astronomers speak of deep time to explain the vast, almost unfathomable timeframes of our planet and the universe. You interact with deep time when gazing at a faraway star at night. The light from that star has been traveling maybe millions of years to reach your eyes here on Earth. And gazing at an ancient rock, while not as sexy as stargazing, it is also peering into the deep past, just like light from that star. Western culture disrespects the past, just as it disrespects time. We, in many ways, are exiles from the past. The French philosopher Bruno Latour describes modern society as having, quote, a peculiar propensity for understanding time that passes as if it were abolishing the past behind it. Earlier cultures were steeped in respect for the past, for the ancestors, for Mother Earth. In Norse mythology, the world tree holds up the cosmos and is nurtured by three mysterious women, sometimes described as representing past, present, and future. They personify the Norse concept of Vird, or the power of the past upon the present. Geology is about understanding Vird, the way the secret stories of the earth hold up the world and define our present, maybe, just maybe, show us a path into the future. The seven-generation idea, articulated by the Iroquois and many other native cultures, posits that society should only take action after contemplating the effects on the unborn 7 generations into the future. My Apache friends in Arizona have a different take on the 7-generation idea. They believe that we are in the middle of 7 generations, and we must consider 3 generations in the future and 3 generations in the past. What are the lessons from the earth regarding climate change? In an extremely short span of geologic time, humans have become a geologic train wreck, an out-of-control global bulldozer, a force of nature. However, it's a geological fact that organisms have always messed with the earth, particularly the atmosphere. Chemically speaking, the Earth's atmosphere has never been in equilibrium, at least not since single-cell algae evolved 2.4 billion years ago. I think they were in the book, Crystal. And oxygen began accumulating in the atmosphere. Oxygen would not be present in our atmosphere if it weren't for living things, and we would not be here if it were not for oxygen. So in the 1970s, James Lovelock and Lynn Margolis developed a kind of new age sounding theory of Gaia, suggesting that the earth behaves as if it were alive. The earth self-regulates the climate, so they argue, to maintain a state that's suitable for life. The buildup of oxygen can be seen through the lens of Gaia. Oxygen from evolving plant life paved the way for all the animals we know and love, including us. And it completely altered the chemistry of the atmosphere and the oceans and the entire landscape of our continents. And just like oxygen, the deep time history of carbon dioxide, which is our greenhouse gas pollutant, also seems to reflect a Gaian principle. Over geologic time, there have always been emissions of carbon dioxide to the atmosphere, and yet there has not been, geologically speaking, a consistent buildup of natural CO2. This is because there are geologic feedback loops that remove much of that carbon. The geologic polluters were, and still are, volcanoes. And while far from constant, the Earth managed quite well for a couple billion years by converting a lot of that carbon dioxide into rocks. So the Earth's atmosphere has been severely altered by living things for more than 2 billion years. We are just the latest permutation of a very old story. Of course, the big difference is the speed at which we are changing the atmosphere with emissions of carbon dioxide from fossil fuels and other pollutants. It probably took 100 million years for oxygen to build up in the atmosphere back in the Archean era. And we're managing to make these changes in just a couple hundred years. It's this rapid rate of change that's so problematic. When Darwin explained natural selection and evolution of species, he was something of a uniformitarian. This is not Unitarian, I don't think, uniformitarian. This is the idea that gradual geologic processes over deep time can explain the world we see today. So for example, a tiny amount of uplift each year can raise up majestic mountain ranges if only given enough time. Only later did scientists appreciate that things are not always so gradual, and the geologic record shows evidence of both uniformitarianism and its counterpart, known by the equally difficult term catastrophism. The Earth is constantly changing, and species are bouncing around this way and that, trying their best to adapt to a moving target. When the environment changes abruptly, when the rate of change is too fast for evolution to adjust, well, that's the trigger for mass extinction. The best known example of this is the massive meteorite that we believe smashed into what is now the Yucatan Peninsula about 65 million years ago, triggering the extinction of the dinosaurs, as well as something like 75% of all species that were alive at that time. It was just too much environmental change too fast. From the perspective of deep time, our alteration of the atmosphere is no different than that asteroid. It's happening at a rate that the Earth just can't keep up with. That's why our predicament is so serious. So let's look at this situation from different time perspectives. From the perspective of the timescales we live by, days, months, years, decades, we are in for some tough times. But let's look at our situation from a geologic timescale. It's sobering to think that just as the Earth has an unfathomably long past, it faces an equally long future. And on that timescale, our messes are tiny, almost imperceptible blips on the geologic record. And Michael, could we have that next slide? The graph, what's a sermon without a good graph? This shows a reconstruction of CO2 in the atmosphere over the last 400 million years. And that little uptick that you might not even be able to see on the right side of the graph, that is our current climate dilemma. Just think about the asteroid impact that killed off the dinosaurs. Today, 65 million years later, the only clues that the asteroid impact even happened are elevated levels of an obscure element, iridium, in one thin layer of rock from that time period. Basically, all but the faintest signs of an event that changed the course of geologic history are completely gone, obliterated by geologic processes. Next slide, please, Michael. I hope that humans have a long run here on Earth, but at some point in the deep future, evidence of human civilization will probably share the same fate as the asteroid impact. Alan Weissman wrote a really odd but thought-provoking book called The World Without Us, imagining how signs of civilization would fare over geologic time if people suddenly disappeared. From a human perspective, signs of our time on Earth would last a long time. From a geologic perspective, yeah, maybe not so much. After a few rounds of continental glaciation over maybe the next couple million years, cities like New York and Tokyo and Boston, they will be completely scraped away. In tens of millions of years, much of the land we've built up will have been recycled into the mantle of the Earth by plate tectonics. So looking back from a perspective of 50 or 100 million years in the future, our legacy might be much like that of the dinosaurs' asteroid. Some observant geologist, maybe visiting from a different planet, might notice a thin layer of silt from the end of the Anthropocene that has a little bit more rare earth minerals than expected. That would be from our mobile phones. If we disappeared today, that's pretty much all the Earth would preserve of our 10,000-year experiment in defying the laws of nature. So what are the lessons from the Earth? First, I think we should heed Aldo Leopold's poetic advice in his book, A Sand County Almanac. He said, we need to think like a mountain. To think like a mountain means to recognize and respect the profound interconnectedness of all living and non-living things that make up ecosystems. And it means to appreciate that the life of a mountain is lived on a different time scale than our lives. It's lived on the scale of deep time. We can show our children that they are on an ancient path that stretches across deep time, and that we all have a role to play in choosing the path forward. We need the humility to understand the earth has many moods and an immensely deep history, and with or without us, an equally long future. A second lesson we can learn from the earth is we can't ignore the rhythms of the earth. We live our lives with all their richness, beauty, sadness, and joy in a handful of decades. The earth's moods are measured by deep time, by millions of years. 7.5 billion people will inevitably have an impact on the earth. Currently, our impacts are happening too fast and too severely, and the earth just can't keep up. Our actions are not just impacting 7 future generations, they're impacting 70 or 700 future generations. So can we do this? Can we rebalance human impacts to better reflect the pace and the rhythms of the earth? Considering the average lifespan of species on Earth is a few million years, there are far more generations for humans ahead of us than there are behind us. We're really just getting started as a species, which maybe explains how it is that we still have so much to learn about our home planet. Assuming some degree of success, the current struggles to rebalance our relationship with the earth, maybe they really will look like a tiny blip on the timeline of geologic history. Is it too naive or optimistic to say that considering the progress we've made over the last 300 years in making life more bearable for more people, who can say how wonderful human life on Earth could be in 100,000 years? We just need to make it past the climate change speed bump. The Earth has recovered from far worse catastrophes. Now that we have the power to change the Earth's natural cycles, we can and must use that knowledge to bring those cycles back into balance. Many species have changed the planet to the benefit and detriment of others, but there has never been before a geologic force aware of its own influence. So more than the undeniable changes to the planet being caused by us, humans, this self-recognition is what is different and ultimately promising about our current geologic era. Geology may be uniquely positioned to show us the way in this time of environmental crisis. Maybe we can use our understanding of Earth history to see that we need to adjust our pace to the tempos of the Earth. We need to see that we are all fellow citizens of a strange but wonderful planet that we urgently need to know better. Let it be so.